Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking All Sports. As per usual, I'm your host, Zach. And on this week's episode, we've got quite a bit to discuss and talk about. A lot went on in all different facets of sport. We've got EPL, NBA, AFL, things to all unpack in this episode. And let's not waste any more time and get stuck into it right now. The first thing we're going to be covering in the week in review is some EPL action, as a lot went down over the week just gone. Brentford knocked off Tottenham on their home deck 3-1 in a major upset. Just a season to forget again for Tottenham, as they are just inconsistent all over the park. Will Harry Kane go or stay? That's the massive question that's going to be happening over in the summer in Europe. Man United knocked off Bournemouth away from home 1-0 thanks to a very good Casemiro goal. Very underrated how athletically difficult that goal was to complete. Did very well Casemiro, and Man United got the win there. Fulham and Palace had a 2-2 draw, and Liverpool had a 1-1 draw with Aston Villa at home, which does hurt Liverpool's chances of finishing in a Champions League spot with Man United that they're chasing at the moment. They got to try and win as many games as possible and hope United pull up short against Chelsea or Fulham in their last two remaining games. Liverpool only have one game remaining. That'll be one to watch. Definitely the last spot for the Champions League can still go to Liverpool if United were to cough up their spot of fourth position at the moment. Wolves and Everton had a 1-1 draw as well. West Ham knocked off Leeds 3-1, which keeps the Hammers safe. They will be staying up in the Premier League next season. Brighton knocked off a team that will be going down in Southampton. They won 3-1. Brighton Hove and Albion. Newcastle and Leicester had a 0-0 draw, which sets up a dramatic final day for Leicester City, Everton, and Leeds, as all three teams will need to win or at least get some points to make sure they survive the relegation battle. That's going to be so interesting to watch the final day between those three teams, all looking to survive and stay in the Premier League for next season. City, they knocked off Chelsea 1-0, and thanks to Nottingham Forest for Manchester City's sake, they defeated Arsenal 1-0, which sees Manchester City become the champions again. Back-to-back seasons in a row. Fantastic effort from Manchester City. The way they were able to hunt Arsenal down all season, Arsenal being on top of the league for well over majority of the season, and Man City to just be sitting on their tail and waiting for a bit of bad form to creep into the Gunners' side. And they took their opportunities. They won the games they needed to win, and deservedly so, are champions of the Premier League for the second season in a row. Very big congratulations to them. And Pep Guardiola, very stiff to not be a Star of the Week nomination. However, big congratulations goes to him and what he's done with his Manchester City team, as he's put them in a position to win all three major trophies for that club, which would be the Premier League, which they've won, the FA Cup, which they've got a FA Cup final against their arch rivals Manchester United, and now a Champions League final against Inter Milan, which will be very exciting to watch. So congratulations to Manchester City. Fantastic from them to win the title again, and cannot wait till the final day now, as we've got a relegation battle to watch, see and play out, as well as potentially a finals Champions League spot to play out between Manchester United and Liverpool. Now we're going to be moving across into some NBA action, as the Denver Nuggets are now the first team into the NBA Finals for this season. They swept the LA Lakers 4-0. The Lakers in that game 4 led by as much as I think it was 15 points and weren't able to get the job done. Denver, what a third quarter it was from them, and then they were able to hold on that last quarter. Massive, massive, massive from the Denver Nuggets. They finally get to the NBA Finals under Mike Malone and with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. They finally get there, and it's going to be very interesting to watch to see who they play in the Eastern Conference Finals. As it stands now, the Heat currently lead the Celtics 3-1. The Game 5 is going back to Boston, which will be very interesting to see how that plays out. Jimmy Butler has been absolutely fantastic all playoff series and playoffs in general for the Heat. Very stiff to not get a Star of the Week for at least one of the weeks. Don't worry, I've been taking note. So that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out for Game 5. If the Heat win, Heat Nuggets, who would have thought that would be the NBA Finals? That'll be what it will be if the Heat were able to win Game 5, or can the Celtics be the first team out of 151? They'll be the 151st team to try to come from 3-0 down in a playoff series and win it. So that'll be one to watch. And I guess this was very interesting to see after the Lakers-Nuggets game, just to go back to that one. The question proposed to LeBron as to whether or not he will retire, and he didn't really rule it out. He actually said he would actually put it into thought and think about it over the off-season. I just want to know, what do you guys think? Does this mean, is this the end of LeBron, or are we just seeing a bit of a premature thought, and he thinks over the summer he knows he can keep going and he will keep going? Let me know. I thought he was going to wait till he plays one season with his son, Bronny James, in the league. Bronny James was only just signed with USC to go there for college, so he's not going to be in the NBA yet. So it'll be interesting. Will LeBron retire? Let me know in the comments what you think. How many more years of LeBron James, or did we just see his final game against the Nuggets? Now we're going to be talking about some round 10 action of the AFL. Sir Doug Nicholls' round kicked off last week in style with a great game between Port Adelaide and Melbourne. A ripper of a top 4 contest. It felt like a final, greasy conditions. Brilliant game. Port Adelaide, the better team on the night, and deservedly so won. Probably should have won by more, but the fact that Melbourne put on that third quarter performance, and most of the AFL world thought Melbourne were probably going to run away with it in the last quarter, is a credit to Port Adelaide's fight and heart that they showed in that final quarter to get over the line by under a kick, which sees them in third position at the moment on the ladder. Thoroughly deserved climb up the ladder for Port Adelaide, who have been in fantastic form. Dreamtime at the G was a ripper finish. Richmond leading majority of the game. It looked like the Tigers were home, but the Bombers showed, like the Port did, showed heart, were able to grit their way back, and then Sam Durham, the hero, kicking the goal in the final 30 seconds to win the game for the Bombers by a point. Absolutely brilliant game that was Saturday night. How about the controversy in the North Melbourne-Sydney game? Interchange breach. You don't really see that often. Just got a feel for the Kangaroos for the incredibly tough season that they've had, which was a season filled with optimism with the signing of Alistair Clarkson, and then starting 2-0, and Harry Sheezel was absolutely flying off the charts. Luke Davies-Uniacke as well. But ever since then, it's just gone downhill, and most people could probably say back to reality. Clarko now stood down, taking time off, and that interchange breach there where they could have knocked off the runners-up from last year in what would have been the upset of the season. They couldn't get it done. And you just got to feel for North Melbourne. They've just been through so much recently. And speaking of coaches standing down, Damien Hardwick has called it quits at the Tigers. He's not taking time off from coaching and coming back. He is done. He will not be coaching the Richmond Tigers again, or for at least this season. What a coaching career. I mean, he was under pressure at the end of 2016. A lot of people wanted Richmond to sack Hardwick. I think Richmond fans wanted Hardwick gone, but they backed him in. Brendan Gale, how about that? A few years ago, putting out that plan of success, wanting 3 premierships by 2020, and that's exactly what the Tigers were able to do, and they did it in the span of 4 years, 2017 to 2020. It was fantastic from what Hardwick was able to achieve, and that's thanks to the club backing him in like they should have. Easy to say after seeing the results, but Richmond for the last 6 years have been super competitive contenders, and teams and the rest of the competition have rated them so highly. They've changed the game for the better with the pressure type football, exciting, sometimes ugly, but it's exciting because it's manic, it's pressure, it's chaos. Tsunami type football the Tigers brought in 2017, which changed the game forever and probably put it in a better place and the best place it's ever been. So well done, Damien Hardwick, on a fantastic career as coach of Richmond. I'm sure AFL clubs are going to be looking at him if they decide to sack their coaches, i.e. West Coast, if they look to part ways with Adam Simpson after their West Coast recent results. I can see him coming back, but I can definitely see him also being done for good now. But fair credit to Dimmer and what he did at the Tigers, and he deserves all the recognition that he gets for being a brilliant coach for the Tigers. Now we're going to be looking at the teams who impressed me the most over the weekend. We're going to start with the Hawks. Wow, what a win. Knocking off the worst team in the competition at the moment, West Coast Eagles, by the biggest margin that the league has seen in 2023. Who would have thought Hawthorn would be the team with the biggest winning margin this season so far. 116 points in Tassie. They were absolutely brilliant, the Hawks, and they jumped from 18th now to 16th with a good percentage. So fair credit to the Hawks. They definitely impressed me. One of the teams that impressed me the most over the weekend. Another team that impressed me the most was the Western Bulldogs. That was a big game down in Ballarat. It was built up to be a big game, and deservedly so. Both teams meeting at a perfect time, Bulldogs and Adelaide. And Bulldogs, although Adelaide got off to a good start, they were just too strong, too good, too classy. 45-point winners over in Ballarat. Definitely impressed me a lot for what they're putting out there at the moment, the Dogs. It's going to be a big blow. Johannesson's hamstring injury, and it's a long-term one as well. So they're going to have majority of the back end of this season without him. They look like a top 8 team to me and are getting closer to looking like a premiership contender as well. But big ups to the Dogs. They were fantastic over the weekend. And the last team that impressed me the most, we have to go with Power, the Port Adelaide Power. They were fantastic on Friday night with their gutsy win over the D's. They're proving again to the rest of the competition that they are contenders. They can do this. They are up for it. Ken Hinkley, I guess, it's a massive season for him on whether or not he's going to be coach of Port Adelaide next year. Their loss against the Crows after the showdown looked really bad for Ken. Roran Treadway, Port Adelaide legend, came out saying the writing's on the wall. He's basically done. And ever since then, the Power have been unstoppable. Like I said, I think a few weeks ago, Port Adelaide and the Dogs, two most informed teams in the comp. Actually, I said that last week. I truly believe they are the two most informed in the comp, as well as Collingwood. Can't forget that, and Brisbane. But Port Adelaide have been fantastic, and they were fantastic on Friday night and deserve every little bit of recognition that they're getting at the moment and deserve to be a top 4 contender and part of that conversation for the premiership now. Now we're going to be moving into the teams that disappointed me the most over the weekend, and we're going to start with West Coast. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what can they do? I mean, most of their team's injured. They only have 27 players to select from. But it's not just the injuries. I mean, if you go back and watch some of the goals that they were letting through, it wasn't injuries, it wasn't personnel, it was effort. It was I'm sorry, I don't care how much AFL experience you've got, whether you've played 1 or 2 games, or it's your debut, or you've played 350, your effort should be always the same, which is 110%. And there was so many times in that game where it didn't look like it was even at 75%. They were just going half-assed, the West Coast Eagles, and 116 points to a team that's rebuilding and openly has said that they're rebuilding, so they don't really care if they get killed on the counter. They're just going attack, trying to practice their game style. Putrid. Terrible. There's so many words I could say about West Coast, but it still wouldn't sum up how bad that performance was. They were terrible. I would say it's a massive game against Essendon, but they're going in at $10 odds to win that game. It's dire straits for the Eagles at the moment, and they were definitely very, very disappointing over the weekend. Another team that disappointed me a lot over the weekend was the Crows. I mean, this is very big now there with their game against Brisbane this coming week. Jack Payne is out for the Lions, which is a massive loss, who's been fantastic for them this season. Tex Walker comes back. If they aren't competitive against Brisbane, I think most people in the competition can rightfully rule out Adelaide as a definite for top 8 or most likely top 8. I think a big loss to Brisbane will show that they're just a middle of the road team at the moment. Very young team. I do remember that. I will remember that. But yeah, just that performance against the Dogs was just no good. Not good at all. I mean, they started pretty positively, but 45-point winners for the Dogs. It just didn't look like nothing was connecting midfield-wise up forward. They were struggling a lot, the Crows. So very disappointing over the weekend against the Bulldogs in a big game that was, a big test, a big challenge, coming up against another informed team. And their performance against the Saints, I felt like it led me astray, thinking that they could potentially knock off the Dogs. But now they've got a massive test against Brisbane, who are in really, really good form. They're at home against them. They're a bit undermanned now with Jack Payne gone, but I think Daniel Rich has a chance to play this week for the Lions as well. So big test for the Crows, but for now they are in my most disappointed. And the last team that's in my most disappointed, which I think a lot of people have been talking about throughout the week and the last couple of weeks, is Carlton. This club just looks flat. It needs something from the reserves, the AFL. The whole club needs something where they that just sparks them into a bit of energy, just a bit of belief, a bit of confidence, because they just look horrendous at the moment, Carlton. I know on paper they're all right. I mean, they only sit just outside the 8. They've still got a handful of wins, but they've lost 5 of their last 6. Their only win coming against West Coast. I mean, that says a lot. They just don't look good on field at the moment, especially against Collingwood. They look so conservative, safe, soft, scared, and it was just embarrassing. That's a big game, and Collingwood are in form, and probably most people will say due for a loss. And Carlton really didn't challenge them. It just didn't look like they were there to challenge Collingwood. It looked like they were there to play Collingwood with the expectation that they were always going to lose. So very disappointed in Carlton on the weekend. Massive game against Sydney on Friday night. They would need to step up because on paper they should win this game with the amount of outs that Sydney have. So a lot of pressure on Carlton, a lot of pressure on Voss. They've got to put in a better performance. I have faith that they can, but for now they are in the disappointed pile as well. Now we're going to be moving on to the round 10 power rankings, and as you can see, as the graphic pops up now, Port Adelaide have jumped the Demons, and for the first time this season, Melbourne are outside the top 3. They hang on to that top 4 position because the Bulldogs, they're coming in hot. They are coming in hot and could potentially take that spot if the D's were to get knocked off by Freo this week, who went up in the power rankings, as you can see. Carlton falling further behind the pack. They're to lose to the Swans this week. I could potentially see them as far as below as Gold Coast. Potentially, I'm not confirming it. I have no idea how I'm going to feel at the end of this round. But Carlton are in dire straits and need, although on paper look okay, what we can see with our eyes, they need to change stuff before it just gets out of control bad. The Bombers, watch that space. Watch to see if how they go. A big win against the Eagles. And a potentially loss to Adelaide and Sydney could see them climb back in to the 8. The Saints hold that position there just underneath the Cats, and the Hawks jump up above North Melbourne and find themselves outside the bottom 2 due to their big win over the Eagles. I had to put them there, and I'm sorry, North. I know you were fantastic against the Swans, but you just have to go down and to the second worst spot because you guys are, at the moment, the second worst team in the competition. And that's how the power rankings look for round 10. Now we're going to be moving into the Star of the Week nominations for round 10. And we've got to kick it off with one of the best individual performances of the season, Zach Butters. He definitely gets a Star of the Week nomination for his performance. Like I said, best individual performance of the season against the D's on Friday night. He was absolutely immense in their close win. In wet weather conditions, it looked like no one could pick up the ball or be clean with it. But Butters was treating it like it was stuck to his hands all game. He was that clean in the tough conditions. He had 41 disposals, kicked 2 goals, 2 very crucial goals, mind you, from 50 out, 10 clearances, 12 score involvements, and he had 18 contested possessions and 8 intercept possessions. He was an on-baller, and he had 8 intercept possessions. That's like being a defender. That's how good he was, and I don't think he played a second of off the half-back line at all. He was brilliant. I can't stress that enough, how good he was for the Power on Friday night. And does this mean he'll finish now in the top 5 in the Brownlow this season? I've seen he's gone equal first now of the coaches' votes so far to start this season. He's up there with Nick Dacos. Is he a top 5 chance for the Brownlow this season? He's had a pretty good year so far. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But Zach Butters, definitely worthy of a Star of the Week nomination to kick off this week's Star of the Week nomination. The next Star of the Week nomination is the Yorkin, I think I said that right, medalist Zach Merritt, the Essendon captain, who was superb in their dramatic win over the Tigers. He led the way brilliantly as captain. It was a captain's performance by Merritt. 39 disposals, 7 tackles, 5 clearances, 679 metres gained, which was the number 1 ranked on the field, 9 score involvements, and he had 12 contested possessions. He was fantastic, like I said, for the Bombers. And his field kicking was what stood out the most. I think there was a passage in the play that leading up to the Durham match winner where he was able to find, I don't think it was actually in the lead up, but during that last quarter when Essendon were charging back home, he was finding himself under a lot of pressure on the wing, and his ability off one step to hit a target through the middle of the ground, 45 metres away from him, was absolutely superb and stood out for me the most. and it reminded me of how good his field kicking has been this season, and that game especially. Is he the lock to win the Bombers BNF at the moment? I mean, a lot of people will argue Darcy Parish has got to be up there, Mason Redmond potentially, Sam Draper, who knows? I think he's a lock in my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Essendon fans, let me know who, if I'm missing out on anyone that should be a consideration for Essendon's BNF. I think he's a lock at the moment. You can tell me otherwise, but for now, he is definitely a lock for a Star of the Week nomination this week. And the final Star of the Week nomination this week, I mean, there was a lot of people stiff this week. Jack Sinclair was stiff. I'd even say Jason Horne-Francis was stiff due to his performance on Friday night. Max King was very stiff in his return game for the Saints, but I could not look past Mitch Lewis, who was fantastic against the Eagles down in Tassie. Terrific in their massive win for Hawthorn. He kicked 6 goals too. For a full forward, he had 24 disposals. Ridiculous. 8 marks, 11 score involvements, 11 contested possessions. Could he win the Coleman one day? I mean, the future's bright at Hawthorn. And if this rebuild goes well and they're able to become successful pretty soon, I think he could potentially win it. Let me know in the comments if you think he could be a Coleman medalist one day, but Mitch Lewis thoroughly deserves Star of the Week nomination. Now, time to look at the week ahead coming up. The AFL has got some great round 11 matchups. Swans Blues, what a game Friday night. Could that decide one of the team's season? If Carlton lose, that's 6 of their last 7 games where they have lost. And if Sydney were to lose, that's another loss and closer to the bottom 4 and further away from the top 8 for Sydney. I know they've got a lot of key players to come back. Tom Hickey should be coming back through concussion. Peter Laddams is gone this week. They've still got no Rampy, no Mills, no Logan McDonald, no Tom McCartan, no Paddy McCartan. They're an injury-riddled team who need a win badly, so a lot at stake on Friday night between those two teams. St Kilda kick off the Saturday games by hosting Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium. The D's, or NAM, will be taking on Walliyallup or Fremantle Dockers at the MCG at 2 o'clock. The Saturday twilight, interesting one. Undermanned Geelong team with a lot of injuries through their midfield. I mean, they've got really no midfield at the moment. Take on the GWS Giants, who have been very plucky and very competitive with a lot of good teams recently. So that'll be interesting to watch. Can the Giants knock off Geelong in Geelong on Saturday afternoon? Gold Coast host the Bulldogs in the Northern Territory. A bit of an interesting game. If the Bulldogs were to slip up, will it be against a team like Gold Coast in tough conditions? And the Eagles host the Bombers in, I think, what a lot of people will say, the Bombers in by whatever they want. But it'll be interesting to see Eagles' response due to their performance last week as they're at home on Saturday night. The Tigers, no farewell game for Dimmer, but they will be hosting Port Adelaide on Sunday in the 110 game. Cannot wait to see how the Tigers pay tribute to Dimmer, who thoroughly deserved a send-off game, even though he doesn't want one. But thoroughly deserves a lot of recognition for what he did with the Tigers. The Pies, they host the Roos at Marvel Stadium. Really weird one. Collingwood hosting North Melbourne at Marvel. But hey, that's how the AFL want it. And probably game of the round to finish it all off. Adelaide hosting Brisbane, I mentioned before. How big of a game that is for the Crows and for the Lions potentially as well. If the Lions aren't able to get up against Adelaide, I think a lot of people are going to say that they're pretenders and that they're going to struggle again this season when it comes to travelling. So that'll be a massive game. I think it's a respect game. A game where both teams are going to be looking for respect from the rest of the competition due to their performance on Sunday night. But that's what the AFL looks like for the week ahead. We've also got some more Premier League action. Match day 37 for a few teams, Manchester United and Chelsea especially. And we've also got match day 38 coming up as well, which will see the relegation battle fully heat up, as well as that final spot in the Champions League for next season. There's also Eastern Conference Finals action between the Celtics and the Heat, who will be joining the Denver Nuggets in this year's NBA Finals. That'll be very interesting. Can Jimmy Butler take the Heat all the way from the 8s at the play-in tournament, mind you, to the NBA Finals, or will the Celtics get there again for the second season in a row and try and make amends for what they weren't able to achieve last season? That one will be very interesting to watch. That's all we've got time for on this week's episode of Talking All Sports. Once again, thank you very much for watching this episode. If you'd like to, please feel free to like and subscribe and comment your opinions and thoughts on all sports in the world and what you would like to see in future episodes. Sport is absolutely humming at the moment, as it always is. It never stops humming, and it's only going to get even better with the upcoming week. So please stay tuned for next week. We'll have another Talking All Sports episode for you. And until then, enjoy the week of sport, and I'll see you next week.